Welcome to another episode of Players Pulse. It's Wednesday, so that means it's our NSO game of the week. And this week's game is Donkey Kong from the NES. I've got some fun little tidbits for you guys with this one. I also had a good time playing it, and it's a very simple game. Very simple game. You're seeing my footage right now on screen, and so you guys can mock me all you want. I was trying to get some points with the hammer, as you can see here, and I didn't get any video submissions. But remember, if you guys want to submit your videos for your thoughts on Game of the Week, by all means send in videos and I will include them in this episode and basically live react to them and all that stuff. So if you want to participate that way, feel free. Otherwise, of course, just be in the chat. I am shooting for 7:30 Eastern. That is the new time for the discussions. We're gonna live stream Mario Kart World at 6, give or take, and then at 7:30 we will be jumping into the podcast. So if you want to be a part of the live episode, just make sure you are tuning in at 7:30 Eastern. It's a little bit later for the East Coast and a little bit later for the West Coast as well, because I know doing it at 6 is like 3 p.m. So it can be a little bit rough, but that's when we're doing it. So let's jump into the details of this game. All right. So like I said, we're looking at Donkey Kong. All right, and it is one of the most iconic arcade hits that helped shape the entire video game industry. Donkey Kong was originally released by Nintendo in arcades in 1981, but tonight we are focusing on the NES version, which launched in 1983 in Japan and 1986 in North America as part of the early NES lineup. In fact, it was one of the black box titles. Developed and published by Nintendo, this game is a classic single-screen platformer where you play as a little carpenter named Jumpman, who would later become none other than Mario, as he tries to rescue his girlfriend from the clutches of a giant ape. It's a simple premise, but it set the stage for one of the most beloved characters and game universes of all time. Now, before we go into the development and release, I want to talk a little bit about Donkey Kong Bonanza, which we got a direct for today, and I think there's some questions. Are they going to retcon the story? Joey, who's a avid listener and viewer, is wondering if maybe it'll be a dream. Maybe this was a dream. I don't know. We're gonna have to wait and see. But my idea of Donkey Kong bringing Pauline and then Mario showing up and it being the end of Donkey Kong Bonanza being the beginning of the OG Donkey Kong. Well, the OG Donkey Kong is supposed to be Cranky Kong according to the lore, and well, they showed Cranky Kong in with Donkey Kong, so that kind of goes out the window. So they can literally do whatever they want at this point. And so it's going to be fun to wait and see. My theory is that Donkey Kong is going to take Pauline, since Pauline is with him, to the top of this structure so that she can be at the highest point to do some singing. And that's when Mario is going to assume that she's been captured and go after Donkey Kong. And then that would, you play this game at the end of Bonanza. So we'll have to wait and see. I also said during the last episode that I would love to see this game reimagined in the graphics and art style of Bonanza, because that game looks just absolutely stunning. Like, it looks gorgeous. So I would be very stoked to see that. Joey says the Kong on screen is Cranky Kong. That's what I've always thought. But who knows? They may retcon everything. We'll just have to wait and see. Gaming Since the 80s says, how you doing? I'm doing great. Remember when I jokingly said I wanted a solo game with Daisy? I almost got it today. There you go. Love that. Yeah, getting some more love for Pauline. And hopefully, there will be more costumes for Donkey Kong and Pauline in Mario Kart World. Joey says Donkey Kong Bonanza is just a spinoff. Hey, it could be. It could be. Brian says, can we get a third-person over-the-shoulder platformer with RPG elements? You got it. It's called Donkey Kong Bonanza. Now, getting into the development and release of Donkey Kong that we're seeing on screen now. All right. Donkey Kong was developed by Nintendo, R&D 1, and the game was designed by Shigeru Miyamoto in what was actually his very first time as a lead designer. Miyamoto originally set out to create a game that could appeal to American audiences after Nintendo's arcade game Radar Scope flopped in the US market. He combined inspiration from Popeye cartoons, King Kong, and even old slapstick comedies. Fun fact about Radar Scope, it was a Space Invaders clone, which Space Invaders was like taking the arcade by storm. But the sound effects used in Radar Scope were so bad that bartenders hated having it in their bar and would unplug the machine. And so that was one of the reasons the game was not doing well. What's fascinating is that Donkey Kong's development marked one of the earliest examples of a game with a proper narrative. You weren't just chasing points. You had a goal: rescue the girl. When it came to the NES port, Nintendo wanted to bring its arcade smash hit into homes. The NES version, while missing one stage, the Cement Factory level found in arcades, stayed true to the original gameplay. Donkey Kong was one of the first NES titles to hit store shelves in North America, helping establish the console as a serious player after the video game crash. Joey is asking, weren't they almost sued? They were sued. They were sued. We'll talk about it. Gameplay details. In Donkey Kong, players control Jumpman, navigating platforms, climbing ladders, and dodging hazards to reach the top of the screen where Donkey Kong holds Pauline hostage. Each level gets progressively harder, with barrels rolling faster, fireballs appearing more frequently, and platforms becoming trickier to cross. The controls were simple: just move, climb, and jump. But the timing and precision required made the game challenging and addictive. It's a unique mix of platforming, timing, and problem solving, set it apart from most games of the era. Reception and legacy. When Donkey Kong hit arcades, and later the NES, it was a massive success. The arcade version became one of Nintendo's biggest hits, selling over 60,000 arcade cabinets worldwide, and the NES port played a huge role in building trust in the new home console market. Critics and players loved its fun characters, innovative gameplay, and the fact that it told a story. Today, Donkey Kong is seen as one of the most important games in history, not just because it introduced Mario, but because it showed that video games could have characters, stories, and personalities. It laid the foundation for platformers and for Nintendo's rise as a global gaming giant. All right, let's get into some of the fun facts and trivia here. First up, the name Donkey Kong was intentional. Sort of. Shigeru Miyamoto wanted to convey the idea of a stubborn or foolish ape. He looked up English words in the dictionary and chose donkey for stubbornness and Kong as a generic term for large ape. There's a popular myth that the name was mistranslated or a typo, but Nintendo has clarified that Miyamoto picked it deliberately, though it did confuse American distributors at first. Here we go, Joey. Here we go. Speaking of almost sued, Donkey Kong sparked a major legal battle with Universal. Universal City Studios sued Nintendo in 1982, claiming Donkey Kong infringed on King Kong. But in court, Nintendo argued successfully, thanks to Jack Kirby, that King Kong was in the public domain, and Universal itself had argued as much in prior cases. Nintendo won, and the case helped establish the company's legal credibility in the US and built its confidence to take on other markets. Now, I have a little bit of I have some of the dirt, if you will, because it's honestly this is really fun to look to look up and understand everything that went into this lawsuit. It was one of those scenarios, like basically Universal started strong arming other companies, Coleco and some of these other these gaming companies, and they started claiming the revenue for Donkey Kong because they said they owned King Kong, and they ended up having to pay Nintendo like 1.4 million after it was all said and done. They also created a clone of this where they used a firefighter to climb instead of a carpenter, and that also got them into some trouble. So there's a lot of history, a lot of deep history with this game and the business side of things and how everything went down. So it's, if you ever want to get into the weeds on Donkey Kong and what it did in the courts, because there are Atari versions, Coleco versions, all this, and Universal was strong arming a lot of these companies and saying, you need to be paying us, not Nintendo, for the sales of Donkey Kong. And Jack Kirby, there's a reason that Kirby is the most powerful character in the Nintendo universe, and the reason he's named after the lawyer that won this case. So there's a lot of fun tied into the history of Donkey Kong. And also, speaking of the history, if you guys ever want to watch a documentary on the world records for high scores, there's the King of Kong, and I believe another one is Fistful of Quarters, and they are very interesting. You've got characters like Billy Mitchell, who like sends in a tape of his world championship run, and you know, there was weird glitches taking place. There's different ROMs that are used. So there's all these rules and like it's really worth a watch if you want a pretty fun documentary on the world record high score, because you play this game up until a kill screen. If you play the original arcade ROM, it only goes so far. So you can only get the score so high before you end up running out of levels, because essentially the game runs out of memory. Taking a look at a few more of the fun facts and trivia. Pauline was the first damsel in distress in video game history. Before Princess Peach, there was Pauline. Donkey Kong introduced the concept of rescuing a kidnapped love interest, a trope that became common in video games. Her original design was based on Popeye's olive oil, because the game's earliest design drafts were going to feature Popeye, Bluto, and olive oil before Nintendo lost the Popeye license. And what's interesting is the Popeye game that ended up coming out later is also fantastic, and I was addicted to that game in the arcade. And I mentioned it in my book. If you guys have, if some of you may not even know I've written a book, but if you go on Amazon or Audible, you can check out Another Castle. And I mention it in the book that like sometimes in life, when we get a no, it can lead to some of the best things ever, right? And when Nintendo was told no, they cannot use Popeye, Shigeru Miyamoto created Donkey Kong, Mario, and Pauline. And now look at what Mario has done for that brand. And if they had been told yes, this game would have been Popeye, not Donkey Kong. And so I kind of love that. I kind of love just looking back on that and seeing what transpired. And because of the no, we ended up getting Mario. The NES version is missing a stage. And fans noticed. The arcade version of Donkey Kong had 4 stages: the barrel stage, the pie cement factory, the elevator stage, and the rivet stage. The NES version, however, cut out the cement factory stage, likely due to memory limitations at the time. For For years, fans lamented the missing level, but modern ports and remakes often restore it. Donkey Kong introduced the idea of cutscenes. Donkey Kong featured brief, simple animations between levels that advanced the story, like Donkey Kong climbing higher up the structure with Pauline or Jumpman celebrating a rescue attempt. This was groundbreaking at the time and paved the way for storytelling in games. And so I love all this stuff, all this stuff because of this simple little game. All right, so taking a look at chat, Brian says no just means not right now or not this way. Exactly. So now I want to hear from you guys. What did you think of your time with this game? And does anybody have their high scores ready to go? I want to hear if you guys set any high scores. I think mine was right around 23,000. I can fast forward. Yeah, 23,100, I believe, was my high score. So taking a look, Cryptic says, I really enjoyed this game. I always die on my second run. Do you know the difference between A and B? They both feel the same to me. That's a great question. Let me look it up real quick. What is the difference between A and B on Donkey Kong NES? I was kind of wondering the same thing. Interesting. A is an easier difficulty and B is a more challenging version of A. So there you go. I had no idea. So that is very interesting. Taking a look here, Cryptic also says, I always find it interesting that Pauline has a pink dress and looks like Peach. Was it the box art where the red dress came into play? Let me see. I have the if I look at the thumbnail real quick, I can tell you. So yes, she's wearing, but she's still blonde. She is still blonde, and I think the reason the pink is there is because if they had made her red, she would have matched the stage. I mean, look at Mario is the exact same color. It's also worth noting that Mario's in red bibs, not blue, right? So it's kind of funny, and a lot of it had to do with what the color palette that was available. Another fun little history, like little fun fact with this game, is there is a game developer by the name of Mike Micah. Super cool dude. He kind of basically got himself into the limelight a little bit by taking his daughter. Basically said, I don't want to play as Mario rescuing Pauline. I want to play as Pauline rescuing Mario, and he reprogrammed the game so that's what happened. And there's some cool footage and videos and stuff out there if you want to check that out. But very, very cool stuff. So taking a look here, Gaming Since the 80s says, I have a theory at the end of Donkey Kong Bonanza, Pauline want to go with Mario, and this makes Donkey Kong mad, so he kidnaps Pauline, which leads to the events of Donkey Kong. Oh, that's interesting. I like that. I would be so stoked. I don't know if you guys are like me, but when you look at like movies like Rogue One, where it's like that movie ends right where A New Hope starts, I kind of love that stuff. It's like, yo, we get to see what took place immediately before this, right? And if that's what Bonanza is, I'm gonna love that. If it's not, it's still fantastic, right? It's all good, and it's just, I think there's a bit of novelty and just fun that would, because this game is like, it's the roots. It's the roots. So getting to see what took place before this game, I think would be just such a fun little story to tell. Taking a look here at Joey says, my wife is no different than a wait, what? It's no different than a no. I think I'm picking up what you're putting down, but your wife's no is different than a no from Miyamoto. Brian asks, so Pauline's Mario's main or side? I'm not sure. President Evil 2, welcome to the stream. Glad you're here. Here we go. Gaming says 80 says Nintendo planned that Pauline would scream help, but they scratched that idea because the early test it sounded like kelp. That's pretty interesting. Taking a look, Cryptic says it's crazy that Nintendo early on was in legal battles with similarities of their biggest IP. DK, in my opinion, is a King Kong story. You mentioned Popeye, and Metroid was famous for being like Alien. Yeah, they took huge inspiration. But the thing with the reason Donkey Kong, or the reason King Kong, that Universal didn't have the rights, it was public domain at the time. It was so old that it was public domain. Girthquake says the 5th Final Destination movie loops back to the first one, which was awesome. Yeah, see, I kind of love that, those elements of storytelling where that happens. So I don't know. Do any of you guys have your high score as we kind of wrap this thing up? Let me know if any of you guys have the high score for this. And again, I only put like 15 minutes in. That was all. I wanted to grab B-roll for this. I wanted to play it much earlier in the week. That is my goal with these games, is to play them earlier in the week. But sometimes it doesn't always happen. So, but yeah, if you guys have your high score, let me know in the chat. I want to see if how my high score compared to your guys'. And maybe nobody has it, and that's totally fine. Like totally fine. So, let's see. Cryptic says I don't have a screenshot, but I checked and it was 20,000. So we're right, like we're real close to each other. Because I always died on the second run as well. Girthquake says 874,300. Nice. That's crazy. You win. So let's talk a little bit about the gameplay. You cannot play this game like a Mario game. Mario's movement is not nearly as fluid as in Super Mario Brothers. You cannot jump and then get forward momentum. You have to have forward momentum before you jump. And so there are times that can throw you off, especially if you're used to modern platforming, or even just Super Mario Brothers. It threw me off often. And so what I found that I had to do when I was playing this game is slow down. When I kind of just slowed down and took my time, I could get to the end much easier. But if I tried to go fast, I would end up making mistakes. And what's interesting is the bonus is on a timer. So you don't want to take too long because the bonus is counting down the longer you are taking to get to the top or get to the goal. So you want that bonus to be as big as possible. But then do you want to take out enemies with the hammer so you can add a little bit more to your score? And is it worth it with the bonus counting down? And so that's it's just kind of it's a fun gameplay loop, honestly. And it's great because like you can almost come up with your own game. Like, do you want to just try to beat each level as fast as possible and see how many times you can go through it? Do you want to go for the high score and see how well you can do by playing level after level and just getting through it at a decent time so you can get the highest bonus? And or do you play where you're trying to jump as many barrels and take out as many barrels and use the hammers and see what that can do for your score? Like there's kind of multiple ways to play this game. And another little fun fact, when they put this game on the first stage on NES World Championships, there's a glitch where you can climb invisible ladders all the way to the top. And so people got crazy fast at this first stage because you end up climbing all the way without having to stop or hitting a barrel and then just running over to the ladder and getting on the stage with Pauline. So, and I think it's on one of the broken ladders is where you can end up doing it. And it was crazy watching the replays back, because it's just like, how do people figure this stuff out, you know? And I mean, as you can see, you're watching the early stages of me playing where I'm trying to rush, and it's like, you can't play that way. You cannot play that way. So, Gaming Since the 80s says, speaking of inspiration, Master Chief from Halo was inspired by John Spartan from the movie Demolition Man. Even the 117 on the armor of Master Chief is the prisoner number of John Spartan. Oh, interesting. That is cool. And here it is. Cryptic says, I did that so many times. I would jump thinking I had momentum and I would fall to my death. So many times. Like, the game is notorious for that. Cryptic said, I would also die getting greedy, trying to get enemy kills and grabbing the bonus umbrellas, etc. on the map. Yeah, see, there's like that risk and reward that's taking place with this game. Like, do you want to risk it, or do you want to just play it safe and try to beat the levels? And it really does just add to the fun of it all. What's crazy is that, like, I was never good enough at this game in the arcade to see the cement level that they talked about. So I didn't even know it was missing as a kid when I played this in the mid 80s. And I remember specifically going to my buddy Dave's house, and he had the Donkey Kong combo pack that was like, the cover art was beautiful. It was orange and had these great hand drawn, like, Mario and Donkey Kong. And you could play Donkey Kong Jr. 3 might have been on there as well. I don't remember, but you could play Donkey Kong Jr. and Donkey Kong on one cart, which is like, if it's running out of memory. Now, granted, this was in the early stages of this game, so like, maybe they just didn't, they weren't as good at compressing or getting these games optimized for the NES like they did later. Because it's like, well, if they ran out of space, how did they fit Donkey Kong Jr. and Donkey Kong on one cart? I assume there would be, you know, some kind of conflict of interest with that, right? But they were able to do it. So it does make me wonder, like, if they went back, could they add that cement level? And as you know, there's been multiple variations of this game. If you want to play the OG game on your Switch, you can go into the eShop and buy the arcade archives version of this game, and it is the full original. There's multiple ROMs on that version, which is super cool. And the NES version for the home console by far looked the best of any of them. The Atari version, Coleco, that kind of stuff, they did not look nearly as good as the NES did. So that is that's something to keep in mind as well. Like, this was one of those, like, those rare instances where it was like, I have the arcade at home. And that was I know that probably if you're younger and like the arcades weren't like a big deal for you, it probably doesn't you know, really mean that much. But like, in the 80s, when you could get a game that played identical to the arcade, that was like, the arcade was like, it was something impressive when it came to gaming. And so to have that on the NES, and then when the 16-bit stuff happened, it was, you know, it was game over. I do want to mention, because I was going through my Switch games today, that if you enjoy this style of game, this kind of like single screen platforming, Mario versus Donkey Kong, like the minis or whatever, it is just a bunch of maps like this, and it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed my time with Mario versus Donkey Kong on the Switch. Played all the way through it. It still may be a bit, I think it's like $50, so it may be a bit overpriced, but again, I didn't really mind the price because I didn't want to put it down. I just wanted to keep playing, and I played it with my girlfriend's son, and it was a lot of fun. He enjoyed it too, getting to do 2-player, and I think you play with Mario and Toad in that one. And so it just kind of adds to the nostalgia, if you will, of Donkey Kong, getting to play those games. And that game was completely new to me because I had never played them on any other system. taking a look here. Oh, so Cryptic says, so this is this arcade version. So is the arcade version not owned by Nintendo? Curious why the NSO version doesn't have it. So NSO is the exact ROM of the NES game. And then because the arcade games couldn't fit on the NES cart. It just didn't have the horsepower. So that's why we get these games that are like variations. Like Mike Tyson's Punch-Out is a completely different Punch-Out in the arcade. Same with Super Punch-Out on Super Nintendo and in the arcade are fairly similar. And again, both of those games you can check out on the arcade archives or whatever on the eShop. It's like $7. And some of these classic games are well worth it. You can even get Super Mario Brothers Versus. I believe the Excite Bike Versus, but I think they did put the Excite Bike Versus on the NES NSO as well. So it is available. But so yeah, there are variations, but Donkey Kong was one that was very, very true to its original arcade game. Gaming Since 80 says, Josh, does the name Billy Mitchell ring a bell? Yeah, we talked about it a little bit earlier in the episode with checking out King of Kong and A Fistful of Quarters. Both of them worth checking out. Cryptic says, I know it won't happen, but what if Nintendo partnered with Arcade 1-Up to get classic ports of the arcade games? That would be dope. Unfortunately, Arcade 1-Up, I believe, went out of business. I don't think they are any... you may see a few remnants of their arcade machines in stores, but last I had heard they had gone out of business. So Nady Nay says, so judging by the direct, Pauline was never in distress, but here comes Mario again, stealing someone's woman away again. I feel like Mario is selfish, wants Pauline, wants Peach. Again, my theory is that he's going to take her up there to help her sing, and Mario's going to misinterpret it and think he needs to rescue her. So here we go. Joey Pitt says this game is an 8 out of 10. No Diddy Kong or Kiddy Kong. By the way, make sure you guys check out my latest YouTube short or TikTok, especially you, Cryptic, because it is there's signs pointing to Kiddy Kong in Bonanza. So you've been warned, because I know how much you love that character. Joey says, regardless what Cryptic says, Kiddy Kong needs to be in every game. Wow. Okay. Hot take. Cryptic says, dead like Kitty. I don't know. I didn't know that. I thought they were still around. Yes. Yeah. They did start to get expensive though. Right. Nate says Mario may be from Utah. Here we go. Well, for Nady Nay, we are going to do a Sega game from NSO. So I know you have to have the expansion pack for this one, but we are going to be, I want to make sure I get it right. So I'm going to fire up my Switch real quick. And, but there's kind of something cool happening in, I'm going to check NES first. I'm going to see if the game is here. I don't think it is. So regardless, we'll do it the following week. Because again, I don't think, no, it is here though. Okay. So the next 2 weeks are going to be ninja themed. All right. And so this coming week, we are going to be taking a look. I got to get down to the Sega NSO stuff here. Oh man, it's way down here. Oh, don't tell me I don't have it downloaded. That's not good. That Nate's gonna be coming at me. But I believe Shinobi is on the Sega NSO. So we're gonna do Shinobi because there's a new Shinobi game coming out, and then the next week we're gonna do Ninja Gaiden. Now they're very different ninja games, but there's new versions of and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's Shinobi and Ninja Gaiden both have games coming out this summer. And they're kind of being viewed like, yeah, there we go. So Nate clarified for me there. Shinobi was great. Can't wait for Shinobi and Ninja Gaiden. So we're doing Shinobi next week, and the following week we're going to do Ninja Gaiden. And be ready for a challenge, you guys. And literally, I'm giving you the heads up on Ninja Gaiden now because I want to see who can make it the furthest. Like I want to do some challenges within these NSO games. So for both these games, let's see how far you can get. Let's see how far you can get, because they are not for the faint of heart. I'm going to record my gameplay and see how far I can get as well. So we'll add a little extra challenge to this, have a little bit of fun, and we'll just see who can get the furthest. Again, remember, you guys can record video if you want to be included in the audio version of the show, or audio video version. Like I will play the your guys's. I'll just put your audio on here so you don't have to worry about like having perfect lighting and all that kind of stuff. If it's something if it's a game that's real important to you and you want to share some of your thoughts, by all means, record a video, send it to me via Discord, and I will get you guys involved that way. And Nadine says no SP versions of a Ninja Gaiden. That's right. Got to be OG. Cryptic says, so none of us beaten level 1 with those Dark Souls ninja games before Souls was a thing. I'm really excited for the challenge. Ninja Gaiden on Xbox was one of my it's one of those achievements that I've always been pretty proud of when it comes to gaming, because I would go to bed every night saying I'm taking this game to GameStop when I wake up in the morning because it was so hard. So I'm excited to kind of dive into some more difficult games. And Shinobi, if I remember correct, is not super, super difficult, but it is fun. And I remember playing, I don't remember which ones I played exactly back on the Sega Genesis, because I know there's at least a couple of them. So I'm hoping it's the same one. But I remember, I'm 99% sure that was a game that me and my buddy would play all the way through. So they're very fun, but they are very, very old school. Very old school. So next week, Shinobi. The following week, Ninja Gaiden. Thank you guys so much for being here, for listening after the fact, and for just making this so much fun. There's so much cool stuff going on in gaming right now. I love that we have incorporated retro gaming into our regular conversation. And by all means, if you guys have requests for games, like let me know in the Discord, and it will. It will happen. So appreciate you all, and we will see you in the next one. Bye now.